On a day that would forever change everything, Dr. George Constantine Nishapoulos, better known as Dr. Nick, stood in a courtroom, his world teetering on the edge. Just days before his trial ended, something unexpected happened. Judge Weinman declared 3 counts against Dr. Nick null and void. Why? A witness meant to damningly testify about Dr. Nick's prescriptions inadvertently helped his case instead. This unexpected twist left Dr. Nick stunned, grateful, yet still grappling with the weight of months spent in legal limbo. The trial had been a roller coaster. For 16 days, the courtroom buzzed with tension as the prosecution and defense battled over one central question. Did Dr. Nick prescribe medication with criminal intent to famous musicians like Elvis Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis? To most, it seemed clear-cut. Dr. Nick was seen as a pill pusher, greedy and unethical, but the defense painted a different picture. They argued Dr. Nick was a compassionate doctor helping drug-addicted patients, aiming to control their consumption and keep them safe. The heart of the debate was Dr. Nick's motives. The prosecution claimed his actions were driven by greed, suggesting he sought personal gain from prescribing excessive drugs. They portrayed him as a ruthless physician, untroubled by medical ethics. On the other hand, Dr. Nick and his team argued he was a guardian angel, treating patients no one else would touch, those addicted and in need. His goal was to help these patients wean off dangerous substances, using a method known as drug maintenance, a then new approach for treating addiction. As the trial drew to a close, it came down to one question: did Dr. Nick act with criminal intent? The jury had 3 days to deliberate. When they returned, the verdict was clear: not guilty. The courtroom erupted in relief and joy. Dr. Nick embraced his family and the jurors, who had become unexpected allies. Even the prosecution's expert witness, who had testified against him, confirmed Dr. Nick's good intentions. Despite the verdict, Dr. Nick faced an uphill battle. Whispers of the doctor who killed Elvis lingered, fueled by media stories that painted him in a negative light. He grieved for the innocent lives affected by the trial and regretted the pain caused to his loved ones. The legal fees and lost income were a heavy burden. Yet he chose to return to his practice, hoping to find solace and healing in helping others. But little did Dr. Nick know, the real challenge was only beginning. As he stepped back into his clinic, a sense of unease settled over him. Changes were afoot, and they weren't all welcome. At Baptist Hospital, the atmosphere shifted. Rumors circulated, and Dr. Nick could sense the staff's caution around him. His patient base shifted too, with more chronic pain sufferers being referred to him, a field he was hesitant to re-enter due to past legal troubles. The medical community's view of chronic pain was evolving, but the stigma still clung to those who prescribed pain medication. Dr. Nick, wary of getting entangled in controversy once more, began steering his chronic pain patients towards specialized clinics. It was a difficult decision, one born from caution and a desire to avoid further scrutiny. As Dr. Nick reflected on this new chapter, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was far from over. The legal victory was significant, but the fight for his reputation and peace of mind was just beginning. The medical world was slow to change its perceptions, and Dr. Nick knew he had to prove himself all over again. During my probation with the Board of Medical Examiners, a new challenge arose that would change the landscape of healthcare forever: the AIDS epidemic. This deadly disease sent shockwaves through the nation, causing fear among the public and the medical community alike. Back then, little was known about this mysterious illness. No one understood what caused it, how it spread, or how to treat it. It seemed almost certain that touching someone with AIDS would infect you too. As a result, many doctors and nurses left their jobs, fearing contamination. I saw this as an opportunity to make a difference despite the fear. I wanted to become a complete doctor and fill the void left by the departure of my colleagues. In 1962, I started taking extra training at Johns Hopkins, one of the top medical schools in the country. I wasn't planning to specialize in AIDS, but I needed to learn how to care for my patients who were suffering from it. My goal was simple: save as many lives as I could. As word spread that I was treating patients with AIDS, more and more people from far and wide came to me for help. This meant a lot more patients for me to take care of, which made my job even harder, but I was determined. Around the same time, a controversy emerged that would add to my stress. Some books and media coverage suggested drugs might have played a role in Elvis Presley's death. This sparked intense public interest, with many blaming my own actions as a doctor. One particularly nasty book by Albert Goldman painted a very bad picture of me and my relationship with Elvis. It claimed I was responsible for his death, a claim that was both false and hurtful. The media frenzy continued, with TV shows and interviews highlighting the drug allegations against me. It was tough to deal with the constant scrutiny and false accusations. But I kept focusing on my work, treating patients and trying to help those affected by AIDS. My situation took an unexpected turn when I was kicked out of a medical co-op after providing too much free medicine. With no equipment or resources, I had to find temporary places to work. I briefly worked at a nearby high-rise building and then at the Sutherland Group at Baptist Hospital East. Eventually, I found a stable position with Dr. David Mayer at the Ridgeway Center. Dr. Mayer needed someone to examine patients before eye surgeries, and it was a good fit for me. However, the media attention started affecting Dr. Mayer's patients, who complained about the photographers. To avoid further issues, I agreed to find other arrangements. The media spotlight on me only grew stronger with the release of another Elvis book, The Death of Elvis: What Really Happened. This book detailed how its authors, Charles Thompson and James Cole, had worked to discredit me and link drugs to Elvis's death. They even managed to get a hold of Elvis's confidential autopsy report, which they used to support their claims. It was a painful read, seeing how they used the situation for personal gain and damaged my reputation further. The fallout from the book was significant. It led to a resolution by the Shelby County Commission, calling for Elvis's death certificate to be considered false and misleading. They wanted a new investigation into his death, citing major differences between the published autopsy report and the official certificate. Despite this, the pressure on me continued. In 1992, I faced more charges from the Division of Health-related boards, accusing me of prescribing too many controlled substances and not following regulations for methadone treatment. Although several patients were listed in the charges, only one would ultimately be pursued. Meanwhile, the state was still waiting for my response on the Elvis death certificate investigation. In April 1992, the state attorney general replied, stating there was not enough evidence to suggest any legal violations in Elvis's death certificate. It was a relief, but the constant challenges took a toll on my career and personal life. Through it all, I kept focused on my work, driven by the desire to help those in need and clear my name. The journey was tough, but I remained committed to being the best doctor I could be, even when faced with overwhelming adversity. The story of Dr. Nick and Elvis Presley took a dramatic turn after the Shelby County Commission refused to reopen Elvis's case. This refusal led to a lawsuit by the commission, sparking widespread interest. The Associated Press picked up the story, claiming the state hadn't done enough, as the book, The Death of Elvis, suggested specimens had shown Elvis died from a drug reaction. This claim captured the public's imagination, even though many hadn't read the book. For Dr. Nick, however, this was more than just a media frenzy. His friend, a patient of Dr. Smith, said the pursuit of a cover-up was about getting Dr. Francisco out of office. Dr. Smith had tried and failed to get Dr. Francisco's autopsy report. This failure led him to use the book's revelations as a way to push for more answers, possibly driven by a desire to expose any wrongdoing linked to Dr. Francisco. Some saw this as a political move against Dr. Francisco, stemming from Dr. Smith's dissatisfaction with not receiving the autopsy report. With public interest high due to ongoing reports of Elvis's drug use, state officials acted. Paula Taylor, the state registrar of vital records, agreed to a new investigation into Elvis's death. This investigation would review Elvis's medical records, autopsy details, and drug reports without exhuming his body. Dr. Nick hoped this would clear his and Elvis's names, but things took another turn 5 months later. His DEA permit was revoked after a complaint about giving unnecessary drug injections. This move seemed to confirm suspicions for Dr. Nick. A single complaint had triggered the DEA's attention. He faced ongoing pressure, including hate mail, as the investigation deepened. The reasons for the DEA's renewed interest remained murky, even years later. It started with a bizarre chain of events involving informants, a suspicious letter campaign, and Dr. Nick's treatment of chronic pain patients. He was forced to give up his DEA permit temporarily while awaiting a hearing. During this time, Dr. Nick reached out to other doctors for help with his patients. He found an article by Dr. Daniel Brookhoff that offered a solution. Dr. Brookhoff agreed to help Dr. Nick's most desperate patients, including Lydia Kramer, who suffered from AIDS, and Emery Williams, a war veteran with chronic pain. These patients faced discrimination and lack of care due to their conditions and Dr. Nick's previous involvement with them. Dr. Brookhoff's involvement was crucial. It allowed Dr. Nick to continue helping those in need, despite his own legal troubles. The medical board's hearings loomed, determining if Dr. Nick could keep his medical license. Through these trials and tribulations, Dr. Nick remained committed to his patients, even when the system seemed against him. In the end, the story of Dr. Nick and Elvis Presley is one of determination, controversy, and the fight to do what's right, even when faced with overwhelming opposition. It shows how personal convictions can drive a person to challenge the status quo, even at great personal cost.